So for the first video in my informal series on Star Trek from a submarine veteran's perspective, I'm going to talk about the character that I feel is the most unique Starfleet main character in all of Star Trek. This guy. Miles Edward O'Brien. Some of you may be thinking to yourself, what? You're not going to start with one of the captains? Like Kirk, or Sisko, or Archer? Nope. Everybody else does that. I'm starting with O'Brien. Why, you ask? Because he's unique. Now, what makes O'Brien unique? He's a heterosexual white male, you may be thinking. He's human. That's the very antithesis of unique, especially in the Star Trek universe, where you've got androids, Klingons, and Ferengi working in Starfleet. I mean, he wasn't even the first Irishman we'd seen in Starfleet either. On the original series, there was Riley.
You know what Joe's mistake was? He wasn't born an Irishman.
Have no fear, O'Reilly's here. And one Irishman is worth 10,000.
You, Mr. Riley, Lieutenant.
The roses all have left your cheeks. I've watched them fade away and die.
What makes O'Brien the most unique Starfleet main character is the fact that, unlike all other Starfleet main characters, he's not an officer. He's an enlisted man. A chief, in fact. Now, you may be saying to yourself, but on the original series there was Yeoman Rand. Once again, I said main character. Yeoman Rand wasn't a main character or even a series regular. As stated, O'Brien was a chief. Now, what does that mean? In fact, what does enlisted mean? Most main characters on most Star Trek shows are Starfleet officers, so most Star Trek fans are familiar with the officer ranks. They know that once a given officer graduates from Starfleet Academy, they start out as an ensign, and from there they go to lieutenant junior grade, full lieutenant, then lieutenant commander, and then captain. There are ranks after captain that we won't get into right now. These ranks do correspond to the officer ranks in the United States Navy. Chief Petty Officer, or Chief for short, is also a rank from the United States Navy. A chief occupies the senior tier of the enlisted ranking system. All enlisted ranks, regardless of branch of service, have 3 tiers. In the Navy, you start out as a recruit, and from there you go to being an apprentice, and then either a full seaman, airman, or fireman, depending on what your chosen vocation is. That's the first tier. The second tier of ranks are Petty Officer 3rd Class, Petty Officer 2nd Class, and Petty Officer 1st Class. Then there's the third tier, consisting of Chief, Senior Chief, and Master Chief. There is technically one more rank higher than that, called Master Chief Petty Officer of the Navy, but there's only one of those at any given time, so I tend to think of that as a title more so than a rank, but officially E10 is a rank. Chiefs, like all enlisted personnel, do not attend the United States Naval Academy. However, chiefs have been known to be instructors there. It can be safely assumed that Chief O'Brien, as an enlisted man, never went to Starfleet Academy either. However, there is a piece of dialogue from the episode Trials and Tribulations, in which Dr. Bashir and Chief O'Brien share a turbolift on the original Enterprise, and a bewildered Bashir asks, perhaps rhetorically, if the chief ever attended quantum temporal mechanics at Starfleet Academy. It's a confusing line, and Ronald D. Moore later went online and said that that was in fact a mistake, although he says that it wasn't necessarily a mistake that the writer made, it may have been a mistake that Bashir made. At the time, Bashir was portrayed as something of a flibbertigibbet, and his genetically engineered status hadn't been revealed yet at that time, so he was often portrayed just as a naive young man who often ran at the mouth. And that's how I tend to look at it too. When we look at the various Star Trek shows, we tend to see a rather stark absence of enlisted ranks. The various enterprises seem to have more commissioned officers on board than enlisted personnel. The opposite is true in the United States Navy. Here's a picture of my old submarine, the Trepang, with most of the crew posing in front of it while she was in dry dock undergoing regular maintenance. The guys in blue are all junior enlisted, meaning they belong to the first 2 tiers that we spoke of earlier. The guys in khaki are officers and chiefs. Notice the ratio. Chiefs wear the same uniforms that the commissioned officers do, but with different accoutrements. Their rank insignia on their dress uniforms is made up of 3 chevrons under a dome and a silver spread eagle above. Senior chiefs get a single star above the eagle, and master chiefs get 2. I'm mentioning this now because it's going to become somewhat significant later on. As an enlisted man, O'Brien most likely went to some sort of Starfleet boot camp, then a series of schools afterwards. Just as an aside, after I completed boot camp, I then attended basic enlisted submarine school, followed by damage control and firefighting school, and then my sonar A school, where I learned the basics of being a sonar operator, before setting foot on a submarine. As stated, most likely Chief O'Brien instead had a boot camp experience. Now, what would such an experience be like? We're often told by officers as they reminisce about their days at the academy that their experience there was, a journey of enlightenment and very pleasant. They like reminiscing about it the same way a civilian will sometimes reminisce about all the fun they had in college. Whenever we see Starfleet Academy, it's usually this serene, park-like campus environment where there's not a lot of things going on. People seem to be enjoying themselves. So what kind of experience would Chief O'Brien have had at Starfleet Boot Camp? Well, look no further than Navy Boot Camp, and you'll get an idea.
Quickly, on the hop, let's go, power, hurry up, let's go female, hurry up, let's go, move faster you! Look straight! Welcome to the United States Navy. For the next 8 weeks, you will not do a single thing on your own. I tell you what to do, how to do it, when to do it. Nothing that I ever tell you is a request, an option, or a suggestion. We'll roll up your pant legs 3 inches up. When you are done, you will be on the tow line, standing straight, looking straight, awaiting further instruction. You have 15 seconds. Go! Hurry up!
Let's go!
I said, behind you! Not next to you! You, behind you!
Is that touching your heels? No, it's not! Fix it! Pull yourself! Pull yourself!
Put your garbage away! Aye, Chief! That's how you sound off! Talk loud!
Aye, Chief.
He said get down to the last shirt with sleeves! Maybe I wasn't loud enough. Maybe you couldn't understand me. Fix yourself now! When I say go, you will make your initial phone call home. You will call someone that can confirm your existence. Somebody that knows that you came here to Navy boot camp.
Let's go! I'm safe. Have your phone borrowed, this person. Let's go! Let's go!
The next time I'll be able to call you is in 3 weeks.
So females, turn up your phones, place it in your bag. Let's go.
Hang up! Give this phone back to whoever owns it. Who said to stand like that? You must love getting special attention. Huh?
No, Chief.
Get that attention! Now! I'm pretty sure that I said your hands will never be behind you, your hands will never be in front of you! What is your problem?
Medium.
Proper military bearing will be maintained 24/7 and it starts tonight. Do you understand me?
Yes, Chief.
I can't hear you. Do you understand me?
Yes, Chief.
Pretty sure I said you will sound off.
Yes, Chief.
Huh?
Yes, Chief.
Did I say walk back on the tow line? I didn't. Do you know where you're at? Respond! Say something! Yes, Chief. No, Chief. Maybe, Chief. What is it?
Yes, Chief.
Because responding is not an option. So what is it doing next to you? Huh? Let me guess. You want... no! Now you want to fix it. Maybe had you just done the right thing the first time, you wouldn't be in this situation.
Because again, when you do get to the fleet, we want to make sure that you fight and you don't fold.
Sit up straight, eyes on me. I'm Petty Officer Sperry. I will be your lead RDC. Petty Officer 10 will be your second RDC. Petty Officer Gonzalez will be your third RDC. Together, we have 8 weeks to transform you into United States sailors.
You are no longer a civilian. Whatever you were before is now over. You are about to begin a journey that's going to make you a part of the greatest naval force the world has ever known. This training will not be easy. It wasn't meant to be. You will not be coddled nor disrespected, but you will be held to a high standard. Our job as your RDCs is to turn you into basically trained sailors. Your job as recruits is to do what you're told and give us 100% motivation.
You'll all be treated the same, no matter your sex, cultural background, religion, or sexual orientation.
There are no individuals in the military. We're many, but we operate as one unit. For this team to be successful, you have to work together. If you fail, the team fails. Get on your feet. Get up.
Let's go. Let's go.
I don't give a crap if you're tired, if you think the sea bag's too heavy. You came here to serve, so own up and do it.
Anything that you were before you came here, you wave goodbye to that. That's gone. Because as long as people in this world want to take your life because of where you live, because of where you breathe, you must be ready. And if you're not ready, we don't need you.
Get the picture? While Starfleet officers regularly reminisce fondly about their days at the Academy the way most civilians fondly reminisce about their college years, you won't find many enlisted people reminiscing amongst themselves about their days at boot camp and the various schools they attended because, well, they were all in it. Boot camp generally isn't an experience to be reminisced or savored, but rather an experience to be gotten through. I suspect Starfleet boot camp would be very similar. We never hear O'Brien talk about Starfleet boot camp. The fact that he never does isn't proof that there isn't a Starfleet boot camp. The only people who like hearing boot camp stories are typically civilians who never went through it themselves. In the United States Navy, all sailors are firefighters, sentries, and of course janitors. Damage control on a ship is a huge emphasis of Navy boot camp. We can therefore safely assume that the first things O'Brien learned were those things. Now, I'm not going to sit here and, read the contents of Chief O'Brien's entry from Memory Alpha. To me, Star Trek lore should not be reloaded in that way on videos. Other people can do that, but I'm not going to do that. If you would like to an in-depth information concisely told about the life of Chief O'Brien as a character in Star Trek, you can go ahead and go read that entry. Memory Alpha is a pretty good site. It's been around for a while now, and they've done a pretty good job of making sure people with their own headcanon ideas don't insert things into it and try to pass it off as canon. Why people do that, I don't know. Probably something to do with their egos. But anyway, let's talk about Chief O'Brien for a moment. The first time we actually see O'Brien is in the Star Trek The Next Generation pilot Encounter at Farpoint, in which he was an unnamed character who manned the helm, or ops console, of the Enterprise battle bridge when Captain Picard separated the ship in response to their first encounter with Q. The next time we saw him, he appeared to be fulfilling a kind of security officer role. And after that, we saw him settle into the role that came to define his time on Star Trek The Next Generation. He was the primary transporter chief. Now, we do need to clarify something. We also saw officers man those same watches and stations. This is entirely accurate from a naval standpoint. There is some overlap between the watches that chiefs in real life stand and those watches stood by junior officers. For example, let's look at this picture from the USS Pargo and its control room. The Pargo, by the way, was a sister ship of mine, and so the control room here is virtually identical to the one that we had on board Trepang. The guy with the mustache seated in between and behind the two younger gentlemen in the front, that's the dive officer. That's the name of the watch that he is standing. And by the anchors on his collar, you can tell that he is a chief. He is a senior enlisted. That watch station is manned by either chiefs or junior officers like ensigns and lieutenants junior grade. You want that overlap because there isn't always enough ensigns on a submarine in particular to man that station when it needs to be manned. So you need senior enlisted people to qualify it and stand it. Junior officers typically don't stand it very long. Someone who is an ensign when they first report on board is probably going to be in a lieutenant junior grade within about a year. And at that point, then they start grooming them to be a department head, either a nav department head or a weapons department head or engineering. And so you need chiefs to be able to stand those watches. Oftentimes during battle stations, the preferred watch stander for the dive officer position is a senior chief or a master chief. And so when I look at scenes where Chief O'Brien is, for example, manning Worf's tactical station, or he's sitting in Wesley Crusher's place on the bridge, or he's even in Data's spot, that is perfectly consistent from a naval perspective. Chiefs work their entire enlisted careers and eventually work their way up to the point where they can man the same stations that junior commissioned officers start at. Okay, now this video is already getting a little bit longer than I wanted it to be, so I think I'm going to break it up into chunks. What I'm going to say next, though, is something that I need to get out of the way right away, and that is that O'Brien's rank insignia was inconsistent on TNG. It wasn't until he came to Deep Space Nine that the makers of that show decided that he needed to have some distinctive enlisted rank on his collar instead of the usual pips. And so what we got was this. This is what he wore on his neck. Now this is intentionally reminiscent of a chief's rank insignia. You can see 3 chevrons there. You can also see 2 little pips, or mini pips, or whatever you want to call them, 2 dots. Depending on what those dots represent, Chief O'Brien is either a senior chief or a master chief. I tend to think he's probably a master chief, given that he was, at the end of his career, or the last time we saw him, in charge of the well-being of a massive station that dwarfed the Enterprise, and also, at least for a time, he was also the chief engineer on what was the most powerful warship in Starfleet's inventory, the USS Defiant. He actually served double duty, so I would hope that he was a master chief by then. Okay, but we're going to go ahead and continue on what makes O'Brien unique and special in the world of Star Trek here in the next video. So please be on the lookout for that. That should be coming very soon. I'll also be making a short video here very soon about Aaron Eisenberg, the actor who played Nog. His death occurred while I was making this video, and I felt I needed to mention this right away. I'll be talking about briefly what Nog meant to me as a naval veteran who is drawing disability, because like me, Nog was he didn't come out of the Dominion War unscathed. He did lose a leg, and the episode where he had to cope with that is one of the best dramatizations anywhere that you will find of a veteran trying to cope with the loss of some ability thanks to their service. So be on the lookout for that as well. That should be coming here hopefully very soon. Thank you for watching.